Okay, I guess we can start. Uh, all right, guys, welcome back to this session, Django REST Framework. Today is the day two. We had the first session last week on Thursday, and we more like went over some basics, some foundational concepts that is important and that will be helpful on your journey on being a backend GIS developer. So we discussed what API is. We established some backend concepts like the CRUD, which is basically an acronym for create, update, delete. We discussed the HTTP verbs, get, post, delete, patch, and put. We talked about status codes and their meaning. We discussed client-server architecture. We discussed webhooks, staging environments, production environments. We also touched CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous development. And then we discussed DRF as well. We checked DRF websites, and we also attempted to create our first API, which is a to-do application API. So today is the second day, and the agenda for today is to more like finalize the API and see if we can even deploy it such that we can share it around and interact with it. So yeah, so during the also last week we also created a Django application and we installed Django REST framework. So if you are following, you should have a Django application already on your computer. But should in case you are not, you can also start right away. So what we did basically was to create a new folder, which is this folder, DRF. So I created this folder, DRF, last week. And after I created it, I used a virtual environment called pipenv. So I used pipenv to install Django. So Django is the starting point because at the end of the day, Django REST framework is more like a plugin or an extension to the Django framework itself. So Django is the starting point. We installed Django. And after we installed Django, we used the Django admin to create a project using the command we are familiar with, Django admin. Don't miss the hyphen here. Django admin start project, and then we gave it a name. So what I gave it last week was API. And after we did that, then we have access to the manage.py file, which is a file that it's shipped with Django after you create a Django project. So after we did that, then we created an app and we use the command, now that we have access to manage.py, we use command python manage.py start app, and then we give the name, the app, this name, to do, since we are trying to build a to-do list application, to-do list API. So the idea is this to-do list API is the API we are going to consume during the React class that will be happening on Thursday. So it's just a way of linking the two together so you can have like a clearer picture of what the front end and the back end looks like and how you can connect the two together. So because you're already familiar with templating system using Django, so now we want to see how we can extend Django beyond the inbuilt templates engine and create a REST API with it, and then use the REST API in its different environments or in a front-end setting such as React. So yeah, that was where we stopped last week. I've created a lot of files, but I'll walk us through it. So this is the folder that we created after running the Django admin stats Django admin start project command. You're going to get this. I named my API, but this will be whatever you named yours. Then after you get this, after running the command Django admin start app, you're going to have access to this folder as well. So this folder is to do, and Within this folder, you're going to have access to a lot of files, except these serializers and URLs. But the others are going to be shipped with this app. So maybe we should create a new one just to demonstrate how it looks like. So let's run the command. So because I'm using the virtual environment, so it's important I activate my virtual environment using pip and shell. So whatever virtual environment you are using, it's important you activate it. So this is the to-do app, and virtual environment is still activating. So okay, let's assume I think it's already activated. So this is how you create a new application. I believe you're already familiar with this. Start app, and then you give the app a name. Let's say to do version 2 or something. Then the directory where you want to create it. So using dot means create it in the current directory. Or say the folder. So because if you use as you can see, we have all the files that is supposed to be in the folder right here because it's creating in the current directory. So I think I would remove these files because I want them to be in their own separate folders. Actually, remove the migrations. So I'll delete these files. Delete this as well. So let me put it in this folder. Okay, that's strange. Okay, I don't think I need to actually provide the location now. So it's when you're creating a project that you provide the location. When you're starting an app, it automatically uses the current directory. So yeah, there we have it. So we have another application to do version 2. So this is the one I'm going to be working with. So this application is, the way Django works is Django has projects, which is like the super set, and then we have applications. So you can have numerous applications, unlimited applications. And ideally, in a production setting, it's advised to use different applications for different purpose. Say you are building an e-commerce website, for example. You can have an application for ordering, you can have an application for tracking, you can have an application for payments. So you can like split your project into multiple apps. So that way it's easy for you to manage and it will be more organized compared to when you just have a single app. With using a single app for a lot of things. So after you create the application, the first thing you want to do is to register this application in the superset, which is the Django settings file, like the Django project itself. You need to register this application you just created right here. And this Django settings is under the API folder. And then you go to settings and you extend this. So inside the settings file is where you kind of configure all your Django settings, everything, no matter the how big your project is. This file right here is where you do the whole configuration. Of course, as your project advances or as your code base increases, you can decide to split this file into multiple files. You can, because it's just a single settings file, you can decide to create a module that will have settings for staging environment, that will have settings for production environment, that will have settings for development environment. Because at the end of the day, it's a Python file, so you can manipulate it. You can decide to move all these ones to a different file and then import it So you can always configure it anyways. So when you open the settings file, you have different settings here. The box settings is the one that is very important for us to modify this if we are deploying our application. But I'll talk about that when we are planning to deploy our application. But for now, this is what we are interested in. So under this installed apps, this is where Django register all the application that are in this folder. So this was what we did last week. We added the REST framework because it's an external application that we installed. So we registered it here. So what we're going to be doing today now is to register this. So I like writing comments. So just to provide clarity. So we can register all our internal applications here, and these are the internal applications. All these ones that you're creating here. Any application that you create with the Python manage.py start app command is an internal application. So to be in the string as well, and then you can. So there are different ways to register the application. You can decide to just put the application name, which is to do version 2. That was the name of this folder right here. This is the application. I can decide to provide this app config here, this class right here. It's still going to reference the name of the app anyways. So either one is fine. So you can decide to leave it like this. That's okay. This is the app. You can decide to go into this apps folder. That's .apps and reference this class right here to do version 2 config. Right? So once you are done with this, after doing this, that means you have registered this application. So that's like the first step. So you can save this and then let me close this. So the second thing or the next thing you want to do, I mean, just even like this, if you notice in the settings file, the next thing you're supposed to do actually is the database settings. Or by default, Django ships with SQLite. So I actually use this SQLite file to use this. Let me create a new one. So when I was preparing the material, I used this SQLite file to test run the whole commands, and it worked very fine because I'm actually used to using Postgres for all my Django projects. But using this SQLite kind of makes things simpler in the sense that I didn't even need to set up a database when I deployed this version to Heroku. Because ideally, if you want to deploy this kind of project to production or to any place, you need to start setting up database. And Heroku has like they recently announced that they will stop providing free hosting for applications, and I really wanted us to host our application. So instead of incurring further costs of getting the database, you can just make use of this SQLite. So it's the same thing anyways, the same rules apply. Or inside the settings file, this is where we have our database. This is where you do all the settings that has to do with your database. So this backend, so Django has different backends for different database engine. If you're using Postgres, for example, you have to change this to Postgres. If you're using MySQL, you have to change this to MySQL. So depending on the data sets or the database you're using, that's where we determine these settings. And as you can see here, Django provided the link to the database some documentation. So let me open that real quick so you can see how it looks like. Can you all see my browser?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So just make clicking on that link. Either you press Control and you click on it, or you just copy it and paste it in your browser, you see these settings here in Django. So you can see this is the one that comes with Django. This is the default SQLite tree. And then if you're using Postgres, this will be the settings. You provide the name of database, the username, the password, the host, and the port, right? And if you're using MySQL, the same thing applies. You use another engine. So you can see these are the available engines that you can use. So let me just mention something. Since we are, I'm guessing most of us have a GIS background, so we most likely want to work with a PostGIS database. So if you want to work with a PostGIS database, the engine you're going to use is different. So when working with databases like when you're working with Postgres, you will need to install a library called Scicop G2 binary. So this library makes it easy to connect to Postgres database and create connections and stuff like that. That's if you're working with Postgres. So we need to connect our database to it, our Django application to it. So this library right here will use to connect to Postgres. So you can just search for here Scicop Django. The settings is quite different compared to that of the usual one that we saw it right here on the Django documentation. So this is the settings for that one right here. Django.contrib.gis.db.backend.postgis. So anyways, most of this information are online. So just with a quick search, you can get to see. But if you're not using PostGIS, you don't have to worry yourself. You might just copy this and put it here in case you're using. I'm assuming most of us might be working with spatial data, so it's important I mention that. But for this tutorial, for the task we're working on today, we don't tend to just know that there's more to these default settings that we have right here. What this is telling us, or what this is telling Django, is that this database we're using is SQLite tree, and this is the location to the database, which is this folder right here. This is the base directory, and then this is the name of the database, db.sq, just created right here. So that's about database. So now when set up, the next thing we want to do is to create a model. So there are different ways you can go about it, right? You can decide to create other things first, but I recommend you starting with a model because that's where you get to do. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be working with data, and in this case, this data is to do data sets, like to-do lists, what you want to do. So as we're already aware, we need to create a class for that, class to do. And this class would inherit from the models.model class that Django has provided to define fields. So this class actually represents a table in the database, while the fields represents the column database. So if you want to create a to-do list, just like we have on our phone, we first need that so we can create a task column and then make it a character field, because ideally field, right? And by default, the way Django is configured, when you have a char field of characters you want to store in that field, so it has this max length There, here you can specify an integer, the maximum length of characters. So if you want to accept just 5 characters to do task, then you write 5 here. But I think we should just write 100, so there'll be space, because these constraints would affect or will influence what will be happening on the front end that will be building later on. So if you write 5 here on the front end, if you want to send it to the back end to save on the database, it's going to throw an error. So let's just give it space to write a lot of things, just like we have on, say, Twitter post, for example. I think there's a maximum of 35 characters that you can write on Twitter, social with 35, but there's a limit, right? So just consider it like that. Like that's what we're trying to establish here, providing a limit for the task, the back end of Twitter, and you're also implementing it on the front end. So if they want to even increase, so whatever we do here will influence what will happen on the front end. That's the point I'm trying to make. That's a lot of attributes, a lot of parameters actually, and are common across all fields, right? So see if I can open the Django documentation just to show us, because sometimes you might need to add a lot of. So there are a lot of few. I won't go over everything, but I'll just mention a few that I think would right here will be useful to us: null and blank. I'll explain why this used to us and blank equals to true. So by right, so null equals to true and blank equals to true. And you want to create a field that does not need to be sent from the front end. So if we have an API for to do application, so any field be left blank when the front end is sending a post request to the right, and ideally, this is quite explanatory. Oh yeah. So, but since it's a to-do list, very important. I mean, if you want to have a to-do list, we need to know the task you want to perform on that to-do list anyway. Would not be useful for this field. So choices, they say. So DB column, this is if you want to provide it. So this is something I feel you might also want to consider if you create. Index makes data access very fast at the DB level. This, for example, you might want to search the to-do list, keywords. So you have a to-do list for I will buy food at the and why. I will visit my friend, this kind of stuff. I want to kind of see the one that match a particular keyword. So having index maintain might improve the speed of. So I use DB that I'll perform filtering on them based on those fields. So I use DB index a lot. So Django has made it easy. Just type DB index equals to true, and Django is going to create an index for this. So it's one of the things that improves performance. Query data from the database. So then default. So default right here. Default equals to anything, or because like a task must be provided from the front end. So then help test. So Django administration, Django admin. When you're trying to create a to-do on Django admin, you can see this kind of help text. So this also is documentation as a developer, because at the end of the day, you are not the one that will be consuming the help texts are very helpful for you to also know what the task or what the field is doing. Any helpful string here, the to-do task. Is as simple as that, and there is already documentation for you. So in case you even forget what a particular answer is, I will show us how this will look like when we start as we proceed. Something else I'm looking for. Okay, I think that's all. For this to-do list. I think those are the important things we need. I don't need to add this and this, because by default to be false. Django already have that for us. So after you have a to-do item, something that might also, you may want to know when you created a to-do list. So for that, you can have a field called created at, or just created on, or something. You can, so let's just try, let's assume we want to use created on, or date created, something like that. But let's just use created at. So this is going to be a date field, and you can also make it a date time field anyways, because you want to get the time it was created as well. So this field, this is also another class for storing date time information. So this class right here as well also has a lot of attributes that you can also use to enrich this field right here. And one of them is the automatic update from Django. So the command for that is auto add now equals to true. So when you have this command, Django is going to automatically compute the date and time when this to-do item will be created on the database. Ideally, you can decide to have your own custom model, and meanwhile, this computation is dependent on your time zone settings, because like I said, this settings bar is very, very huge. It's like the power house of the application. So this time zone settings, it's based on UTC. And say for example in Ghana, I think Ghana is in UTC. Okay, I think Ghana is actually UTC time zone. So, but say for example, I'm in Nigeria, it's UTC +1. So if I'm using this right here, auto now add, or auto add now. Okay, I think it's auto now add. If I'm using this right here, don't worry, I'm gonna confirm that very soon. But if I'm using this right here, that means the time that will be on this database will be UTC time zone. So that means if I create a to-do item by 10 a.m. right here in Nigeria, it's going to be 9 a.m. on the database because of the time zone right here. And if you want to use time zone to be true. So we can check this documentation and to learn more about internalization for application. So yeah, so let's just check this datetime field. I think I think it's a very important field. So it's right here. All these things are right here actually. So this is the date time field. Okay, you can see it's auto now add. So it's false by default. This is also false by default. So we need it to be true so that this guy can compute it for us. Assuming you want to build your own custom time, like say I don't want to use UTC. Of course, you can change this to UTC +1, for example. or just disable it to see and make it false. But even aside that, you can also do some manual, like manual computation from the date time, say date time, and then you can say current time equals to date time dot date time dot now, and then you can provide your time zone. Time zone equals to UTC plus 1. Then you just provide this guy right here that default equals to your current time that you have computed yourself. Then you can remove this one. So that's basically what's happening under the hood. So Django is just the one doing this for you and making it dynamic such that it's going to use the time zone you provide right here. Okay, so after we know the time we create our to-do list, it's also important for us to know maybe the time we update it. That might not be of interest to you anyways, so you can skip that. Another thing I want to know is the status. Is it completed? So we can add another field, completed. So that was going to be a Boolean field anyways, because I can keep the default to be false, because when you create a task by default, it's not going to be completed. So but when you're done with it, then you're going to make this completed to be true after we are done with the task. So I created, actually right here, I created some more fields. I should just mention that I created for updated art, and I created for ID. So the reason why I did not create for ID now here is because Django actually have default IDs for items, right? So there's no point to duplicate. The reason why people duplicate and create new IDs when they want to use UUID, which gives us like random 16 digits or alphanumerics, right? So that's when people like use their custom IDs. But I think by default, Django provides primary key. But in case you want to add a primary key, it's also as easy as providing a field for it. Say ID equals to models dot, and then you select if you want your ID to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or be integer. And if you want to use UUID, Django has a UUID field as well. And here you can now provide the UUID you want to use as default. And then you can provide many settings like primary key equals to true, because if you don't provide this, Django is going to use the default IDs, inbuilt IDs. You have to provide primary key equals to true, unique equals to true, and then the UUID you want to use, which is mostly UUID4. That's UUID.UUID4. But I don't think we want to do that anyways. So of course you have to import UUID. So that's by the way. So after you have your models, I think this should be enough. Create a task, update it if it's completed or not, and then you can have the date is created just for reference. And you can also add last updated just in case. That will be the same model, but this one will now be auto now equals to true. So the created is auto now add. There's time you create the task, this is going to be updated by the database and computed. Then this is going to be computed every time you make updates to the database. So this right here is just what we saw over here. So by default it's false, but we are making it to be true so that we can be able to use Django Power instead of creating our own custom date time. And then there are other configurations you can do here, but the one that's actually important is us creating a human readable uh, human readable name for these to-do items on the admin page or on the Django admin. Let me just let me comment this out so you can see the need why we need to create it. Because so after here, the next thing is the to register this guy right here on the Django admin. So let me do that under admin.py. Let's import it. That'll be from dot models. So you can use dot models and you can also decide to do top level imports. That's from to do version 2. That's the name of the application itself. Dot models import to do. You just use dot models. Anyone works, depending on how you set up your imports. So then let's register this admin. I believe you're already familiar with this anyway. So admin.site.register. Then we provide it to do. Okay, so there's that. Maybe at this point we can already check how it looks like on the Django admin. So let's try that. So let's try to start the server and let's see if there'll be any error on server. This guy right here. Why is it perfect select? Throughout this, can register it. So because ideally, when you don't provide an application you have, you will not be able to detect it. So even if you have errors or bugs right there, it shouldn't work at all. As you can see, and a lot of imports that are not correct, but because it's not provided here, so Django is going to skip it automatically. So that's why it's important when you register application in stored apps. So yeah, so this is working. This is the Django admin panel. Let's go to admin. Okay, so first things first, I think it's time for us to make migrations. I think that's what this guy is saying right here. We have 18 unapplied migration. So you can see it's the same Django that you're already familiar with. Migrate. Let's just migrate this default Django migrations before we our new model. You get, so let's do for default. So because when you install Django inbuilt, as you can see, authentication mostly. So after we are done migrating those ones, let's see if we can start the server again and see if we can access the admin panel. So let me split my screen terminal so you can also. Okay, so let me reload this. The migration we made is going to this database right here, this db.sqlite, because it's the settings that we have right. And if you've, for example, connected this to PostGIS or Postgres, it's going to go to create a migration table. And that's where it keeps tracks of all those migrations. So now that we've made migration for the default files that comes with Django, and let's create a super user so we can be able to log in and access the same command that we are familiar with. Python manage.py create, and then let's just provide some random credentials. So username I use Jeff, email I use jeff@gmail.com, password I use test, password again I use test. And Django is so intelligent, it's going to tell you that it's a very short password. So you can decide to press N and to retype the password, but I will just press Y because we are not a super secure app right now. So I just typed Jeff and then the password test. Access the admin panel. Awesome. So as you can see, this is the Django admin panel that we are familiar with. And this is the app that we registered to do version 2, and this is the model. It's not going to work, obviously, because we've not made migration for it. But the reason why it's appearing here is because admin right here. So that's why it's. And you notice this to do's, I don't know if this is correct in English, but there are different ways for you to customize this. I think one of them is by using next official transmitter, and then I think it's Babos name plural equals to do lists. If this is the right character or the right, but let me just refresh this. Oh, perfect. So yeah, you can customize it using this Babos name plural. You can say to do lists. Let me remove the S. So this is for plural. So let me put S. You can also do for without plural. Verbose, just verbose name to do list. So that's by the way. So let's make a migration for this to do list module that we just created. Make migrations. So Django can create a model for this guy right here. You can see create model to do. So then we can migrate. Perfect. So now if you click on this guy right here, you should be able to see the to-do list table. Although it's empty right now, but we can already create a to-do list from here by clicking on that. So you can see what I told you about having a documentation. So this thing right here is coming from this help text, the to-do task. So you can see it right here. So what's the to-do list or what's the to-do task? I want to cook rice at noon. So that's the task, and then you click on save, and now we have the task. You know that's this task right here is what we just created. So these ones right here are automatically created by Django. So you might not really be able to like you might not really see this on the admin panel. Of course, if you want to see it, you can also customize it anyways. But we don't really need to see these guys right here because it's auto now add. So Django automatically computes it from the current time. Then this one, because the default is false, that's why there's no error even if you don't check that box, right? So you can see now it's showing to do objects 1, which is not really understandable. So the way to customize this and make this to show the actual item that you added on your to-do list is by using this inbuilt this guy right here, this inbuilt class method def string. So it's more like a representation of this class, basically. So how do you want to represent this class? Right here. because Django is representing this as an object, which is not bad because ideally everything is in Python is an object anyways. So it's saying this is a to-do object, and if you click on it, you'll see that if this is straight errors. Let me comment this. So if you click on that, okay, it's still reloading. Okay, it's downloading. So if you click on cancel the task right here, so you can even update it and say it's completed. You can delete it. So if you click on it, you see it's still the same task that I have right here. So let's make it more understandable. And the way you can do that is to use this method right here and then return what you want to use to represent it, which is going to be self dot task. Yeah. So this is going to be a string. So we can represent it like this. So if this class is instantiated by Django, instead of showing just to the objects, it's going to show the actual task that we've created right here. That makes sense. Okay, so that's by the way. So that's the first step. Even before you start creating REST API, it's always good to also visualize what you're creating. So after you're done with the models and after you're done with the admin, the next thing you want to work on is your serializers. So by default, serializers are not always bundled with Django application, but you have to create the file yourself. And it's as easy as right-clicking and create new file, serializers.py. So these guys right here are doing a lot of magic. Their work is to convert Python objects to JSON or even JSON to Python objects. And they do more than that. These guys can also save that DB data to DB. They can update the DB. They can delete data from DB. They can even validate data that is coming to the DB. So these guys, they do a lot of course, depends on how you want to use them. You can decide to do most of it by yourself. For example, I do validation myself. I do validation myself. In fact, I just use serializers to convert Python object to JSON. I don't use them to save to the DB because before I save to this DB, I validate the data set. I do a lot of logics, right? I clean it. I do a lot of checking. So I don't really provide my serializers access to the database directly. But the basic level, even at the advanced level, you can actually practically use them for a lot of things. So, and because we already have REST framework installed and added to our installed application right here, REST framework, we can import serializer from REST framework. So it's something that is inbuilt in REST framework. If you go to the REST framework website, you see it right here, serializers. So there are a lot of them. So let's import from REST framework dot serializers import model serializer. So just like we use model forms, we also have model serializer. Sort of model our Django models and makes it easy for us to convert our Django model to JSON and to JSON basically. So you can import from REST framework.serializers, you can import this guy right here. So this guy would more like undo most of the work. It's going to infer all the fields from your models. And as you know, it's going to be another class that will inherit from this. So you can say this class is for to-do list serializer. So you can have multiple serializer for multiple reasons, multiple functions. You can decide to have a serializer for just import or incoming data sets, like post request from the front end or put request from the front end. You can have a dedicated class for them to handle this kind of data. You can have another one for get requests and yeah, for get requests, maybe for lists or detail. Like if you want to get an information about a single to-do list, you can have a separate class to handle that. So at the end of the day, this is customizable to your taste anyways. But let's proceed. So when you inherit from this guy right here, you have access to all the as usual, all the inbuilt methods and attributes of this guy. So one of the inbuilt class that we use is the meta. So this way you provide a lot of fields, a lot of customizations here, but the very basic one is for you to provide the model that you want to reference, because if you can infer from the name, it's a model serializer. So because normally this REST framework serializer has a default serializer itself. That's like the basic serializer that you can now customize by yourself. Of course, you also inherit that one as well. But it's easier and faster to have a model serializer, because with the default serializer, if I want to create a class for, say, to do the serializer version 2, and the default one, I will need to start declaring the field one by task. Task is what kind of field I'll have to go and serializer class module, because it also has a char field already created in your model, more like a duplicate. But okay, this char field, the maximum length is X and Y before it gets to your database. This is the request from the front end into JSON or Python objects. That's why you're using the module serializer. It's kind of very fast, where you just model is to do, and then you provide the fields that you want it to serialize tuple, but it must be a connection. Recently as well, there's a faster way of declaring all the to use, and the faster way is using this called on. So when you specify this, you're telling this all the fields that you have in your model, because sometimes you may not want to make your, that's why you have this option of declaring the fields you want to return to the front end, or the field. You can say you just want the front end to pass you the task, because and the right, because this created ads and updated ads you Django, so you don't really need it to be coming from the front end again. Two fields from the front end. What can also be a collection, or you just use because you want everything. So right here, so let me import this from dot models, import to do. So field right here, I think I should just mention it. So that one is called exclude. Declaring all your fields. So instead of declaring your field one by one, you can just declare the ones that you want to exclude fields. And you just want, I want to send like 10 fields to the front end or 50. 15 fields that you want to send to the front end. Just type all the ones that you are not sending, and Django will automatically infer the ones that you need. Like it's going to automatically convert the others that you want to use or send to the front end. You can't use the two together anyways. You have to choose one. If you want to use exclude, you provide the field you provide the fields you want to include, or you use this to capture the fields. So that's the second thing. So the next thing now is to go. That's the next thing to do. You go to the views. So we have this this is becoming interesting because this is what you do. So we have CRUD, which is what we already established last week. A to-do item, update a to-do item, delete a to-do item, list all our to-do items, details, create, update, delete. I think that's basically all. So, and this is where REST framework is very powerful. To go about this actually. Like, in fact, there are a lot of ways to go about this. Is to use view sets, because with view sets, REST. Let me show you what I mean. So this REST framework is very powerful, and there are always better ways to do stuff. Yeah. So what do you call view sets? Import framework of view sets. Let me just go. The IntelliSense here is not working. Let's try to avoid this. Yeah. Okay, that's correct. Del view sets, no sets. Okay, so I want to show us the simplest way, and then I'll show. This is the simplest way. We import this guy right here, import model view set. It's also right here in the documentation, view sets. So this that has to do with API requests, like this class handles everything for you, like everything, and I'll show of a working API, basically. So inherit this class and then finalize your stuff. Class, I know. Name your view. What do you want to name this view? View set. Because you're inheriting from a view set, so you can just add explanatory and descriptive. So to do this view sets. So this guy right here needs a lot of things, but the basic one is your serializer class. So serializer class is the one we created earlier. This to-do list serializer, so you can copy this and then paste. Ensure it's imported. To do, yeah. Then the second, it needs the permission, but we're not going into that now, which is your you're providing Google query set for this class to use, and that one is coming from our model dot. So to do query set dot or dot objects right here. So actually, this can also be, you might sign out to like provide all your queries, or for this you can just provide everything to the database to fetch all your items. This guarantee. Thank you. This is basically Django warrant. If you want to filter stuff, if you want to fetch a single item, so this is Django warrant coming into play. So this guarantee. After you are done providing this for this, and it's time we start exposing our API to the public. So URLs again does not come shipped with so you can actually create a URL UI file. Anyways, at the end of the day, just create a new file. Then you create populate it with the URLs or like the routes that you want to use for your REST framework has what we call routers. So these routers here are the ones that expose the endpoints that is needed. Because ideally, when we are creating an endpoint for different things, we can decide to create a separate endpoint. It's one to update, to delete, and stuff like that. But with these routers, just instantiate this router right here. I work as a default router that comes shipped with it. So when we instantiate this router, then register our route that we just instantiated using router.register, and then we provide the paths right here or the routes that we want to use, and of course we provide a view set. So routers view set is to do this view set, and then we provide a base name for it. So because you add it to the URL pattern, so that's like the last thing you have to do. Every route file must end up in the URL patterns, and so this last so let me just okay, so I want to show us the magic API with CRUD functionalities. I'll still show us how we can do it manually, and doing the creating the API on the is urls.py in the project, right? And that's so this was what we did last week. So I'll just uncomment this and provide the corrected version. That's to do version 2.urls. This file right here. To do so when you go to this route, Django is now going to check this URLs. When you go to do version 2 URLs file, it's going to see this, and it's going to show us that is shipped with the default router. So let's and see the magic. Okay, so where's the Django? So this is Sean. So to do so let's go view. So as you can see, so by default actually the Django comes or the Django REST framework comes shipped with the to interact with your API. So as you can see, the first thing we saw was the one we created earlier for the admin. If you can remember, this one right here. I want to right here. So these are APIs look like basically. In fact, if I click on this right here, if I expand this and I click on JSON, so this is actually what will be sent to the front end, and the front end will now beautiful, nice way. And like I already mentioned, that there's always ID object, unless you specify that you want to use your own ID, your object. So this is the ID right here, ID one. So it's a new task. Task night. And you can see this to do task right here again, this text that we provide. And you can post, you can see the post request. So once you click on that, save it on DB, you can see. And it's going to show you the results created. And posting, and you can see the HTTP response. So one created, we or when you create something. So if you want to view your to-dos to view your to-dos, because currently so here you can view your to-dos. You want to view a single to-do, and then put it in front of this URL right here, and then opened. And you can also update it. You can decide to change this to completed, like request. So immediately you click to true. Completed is now true. And if you want to come, and then you see that completed for this one is now true. Likewise, you can also delete. Go to the route, and you can see different options that you can delete. It's going to delete that to do for me. HTTP tool for no content. This is basically that. I think this was the illustration I used last week. Fastest way to create an API with Django REST framework. It's very fast. You don't need to do much configurations or more settings. You don't just create. So you can see the ID for this one is now 3. Because Django, although we deleted it, to keep increasing like that. So that's on ID because of that limitation. So interesting. This is just the tips of an iceberg. There's more you can do with everything you're creating here is getting stored on that SQLite database, and you can interact with. Let me reload this. You can see they are still interacting with the same data. You can see, but our front end is not going to have this kind of UI JSON. So yeah, this our this is what I'm going to see. If we want to edit something, we use that. So we won't really have this UIs to be created. The admin panel, you're going to be interacting with the libraries from the front end. Or less than 30 minutes. This is the best route and the file as well. So everything is inbuilt in Django. But if you want to do more, if you want to extend this class, overriding the actual method performing each of those operations. So let me go back to views. So this guy right here is inherited from model view set dot view set. So actually this within this view set, if you check the admin documentation, this view set has a lot of methods. It has get method, it has retrieve, it has delete, it has partial delete, it has a lot of them. You can actually so let me even just copy this right here so I can need to explain. So and what is performing those operations like the list. This method right is going to be called to handle it. Now see what is going to happen because now we are overriding this method and so let's see what will happen together. So do list and see more. You can see expected a response but received class of none. And that's because we have overridden create method that actually does the creation of the to-do list or the to pass. And in Django REST framework itself requires you to return a response, HTTP response to your views. You must return a response. It's very a post request. Under the hood, you got out that okay, this is a post request coming. Create because it's create that does anything that has to do with post. We're reading it, then we are not returning it. Request the model views as well check the to retrieve to make a put request to transfer it here to make a get request to receive it's gonna push it here so and then decide the kind of request you're making and then just transfer it to the appropriate method. So now if I say I want to fetch all the to-dos, let me even just do still the same error. Or if I allow the class that was created, if I reload this, those for me because under the hood it's going to handle it well and return the appropriate. So you can see you can actually inherit here. Inherit you destroy the host here and manipulate everything. For example, it's authenticated. You can say dot user Then, so this method is in if the person that is making the request is authenticated. Request.user. Let's see how that is going to look like. If you notice, it's of the day this already Django REST framework is so smart to detect that maybe via the CSRF token cookies, it's able to infer this and let me just make a get. Of course, there'll be an error because I'm not returning any response and see what is printed. Awesome, you can see my name, Jeff, right here, because that's what I told you authenticated. Print the user. Do a lot of manipulation here without needing for any bug. So because Django requests a response, let's provide this API response. So REST framework has an inbuilt Django also has an inbuilt. Well, let's use that of REST framework. From REST framework, import this guy right here. We can return it after response, and then this guy request saves the status. So this is what you provide if you're. So actually, instead of typing row 200, you can also use the one that comes from REST framework. From REST framework, import HTTP 200, all the common HTTP. So instead of me just writing 200, just provide that. I think you can also provide a message. I'm not so sure. Message or data. Right? So let's see if the error is fixed. Okay. This should be response, I guess. Correct. Oh, perfect. So you see, it worked. HTTP 200 OK is returned, but to the front end. So if I turn this to JSON, so you can see how it looks like on the front end. Of course, the response is 200, which is okay, but no data is returned from the backend. So that's just for us to test how overriding this my name here, because we told you to print the authenticated user. There's no must to do this, just by overriding these inbuilt methods. So I think we just return an empty object just to confirm. So let me reload this. So this is basically showing you how to customize your. Since this is customizable, you can just provide my information and say message. But this is what you used to see on the front end. To do list fetched successfully. So this is the message. Then you can also provide the data itself. It's supposed to be a JSON, meaning you can do to-do list, objects, all, or filter. You can't do that one here. And this is where, but let me show you the error you're going to receive. I'm doing it that way. You can see this to do is our model. Is not JSON serializable. So instead of saying to do objects.all, I just create to do list equals to do that have this to do object.all. You can just say self set. Normal thing in class. So this actually comes with this get query sets to get any query set you define here. You can also override this query set as well. So this method right here is going to give you basically this query set. It's going to give it to you. So list, this is still a Python object, this is still a query set. This is basically just doing to do object.all. Where this class that we created earlier, a serialized to do list equal serializer class dot serializer class, and then you provide your to do. So I'll still show you another way of doing this, because what's going to happen is just that you providing your to do list, your Django query set. So this guy is self.serializer class, and then you provide it. So because it is a list method, you're trying to fetch everything to provide a parameter called many equals to true, using a lot of Django objects. So because this does the conversion to JSON that you would, can now provide this to our response. To do list dot data. So this guy has a method for data where you can be able to data, because it has a lot of things to provide as a data set. You can just return this. So if you really load this now, which is to do list fetch successfully, and then your data, which is the one that has. So this is showing you customization, so that even though we are using the Django, which makes it fast for us. In fact, without all these guys right here, we already have a API working. You might want to do a lot of more stuff. You might want to check the person that is authenticated. I want to even customize your response to the front end, just like this. We're having a serious error, and so this provides room for itself is just to prevent redundancy, but I can also I can do this right here. What I instantiating this class. So it's still going to give us this loaded. You can see it's still the same thing. But that one is just to prevent redundancy. So the same way list is override create, can also override retrieve, destroy. So yes, I think we can already. I think we are good with the. I don't need to worry too much the possibilities beyond way of doing stuff. So that's why I mentioned that. Okay, so let's see if we still have time. So I think we've done all this. So yeah, APL what you provide to the front end because the front end what he or she needs is API documentation. So is to get API documentation. Fortunately, Python was still on API documentation. So you will install this. So this library, it gives you interesting documentation. So let's just install it together so you can. The front end guy will ask you to work with your API. So let me just install. Just stop this stuff. Pip. So after you install things.py, this yeah. So it has to be after static files. I think I'm using Python, so I don't need to write that. Just follow the settings. Okay. This static file, so it has to be common. Then in the urls.py we add this no add this just copy it to my existing URL context. So I think this is just the settings. So this is the permission class. Permission from REST framework import permissions. So permissions are a lot of meaning allow anybody to your anybody can authenticated is often read only. So then for us using our existing API. So if I go to the yeah, let me put this by default API. Yeah, the default this is the application. Not only that. Okay, let me just come to your contact here. So this is the contact that the front end guy will API documentation and then there's the license. So public permission. So let me just quickly mention it using our API. So this is the old way of specifying routes. think this. I think we need Swagger and Redoc. Yeah, I think Swagger is okay. Redoc is okay. I think these are okay. So you can see you can customize basically practically everything. Everything is still Python anyway. So matter the is that it's still Python. So you can still customize it the way you want. Okay, so I think this is almost installed successfully. So, but quickly, let me just show us permissions, what permissions look like using our views. So you define permission in the views or in the general settings file. So REST framework actually have a settings file you can also configure. But let's define our permissions here. Permission is just the people that you want access to your API. From REST, okay, I've copied it. Let me just paste it here. So from REST framework import permissions. So this guy actually can also accept permissions, and it's by providing permission class. Is it permission class or permissions? Let's see. So then you provide the permission you want to. So let's just say, okay, let's assume this API wants it to be purely authenticated. If I'm not authenticated, can't access this API. So it will look like I'm speaking abstract. Everything I'm saying is, oh, where's the REST framework documentation? If you come to this documentation and you click expand this API guide, so you can see there are a lot of permissions of your application that every request that is coming to my application must be authenticated, right? This one I just did, permission class is authenticated. From REST of those permissions, import is authenticated. So these classes. So okay, I'm importing the parents audio, so let me just provide it here. So use binary to even separate them, or you use the normal comma. You can use and you can use or it's kind of support different ways of combining permissions. So now that it's authenticated, let me start the server and show you how secured Django REST framework is. If I hit this API, okay, let me log out from my admin. Let's log out from here. The server up. Once the server is up, I will try to log out. Okay, this is true. Let's keep up. Okay, let's check this guy right here. We're supposed to import it. Look at this. We're supposed to import this from the library we just installed. I'll see show us how the API's documentation looks like. And the server is up, so let me log out of this. Log out. Okay, I'm logged out. And say I want to let me try and get to something. You can see no credentials were not provided. And this is very important when you're working on deploying an application to production or anyway. That's adding permissions to it so that you won't just expose your APIs to the public and not just everyone be able to access this page and populate your database with bad data, or even send SQL injections or uh, XXS attack and all this kind of stuff. So permissions are more like ways to prevent access. Not necessarily authentication access. It can also be like, say, if a particular person is not an admin, you can allow that person to create a to-do list. If a particular person is not part of a particular group, just like this we can do in Django, you can create groups and stuff like that. So this is how permission looks like. You can see the code for that is 4.3 forbidden. 4.3 forbidden. But if you use this kind of permission, don't allow any. I'm gonna replace this here. Memory load. If I go back to that same route, I would be able to access all the to-do list because the permission is now allow any, meaning allow anyone to access it. Oh, it's even still okay. This one is still here. So let me remove this. My reload. So it's supposed to allow any access from anywhere, which is not entirely secure anyways, but depends on your use case, as you can see right here. So that's about permissions. So now let me show us our documentation. So this is the route we give our documentation, Swagger. So let me just copy this and paste this right here. And then we should see our documentation. Perfect. So here's our documentation. To do API version 1, it's coming from here. To do API version is coming from here. This description is what we have here. This is the API for this application. And then you have all your APIs. So all these things are not created by us. All these are created by the view sets that we used here, as provided from the REST framework. This view set automatically creates APIs for getting to do, for posting to do, for getting a single item, for updating, and if you click on the first one, for example, you can also try it out here by clicking on try it out, and then click on execute. It's going to run the request as if it's coming from the front end, and it's going to show you the response, the results in JSON, which is basically what we have been seeing from that the previous REST framework interface, as you can see right here. And then if you also go down a bit, you see the model that we created in Django. It's going to explain, make this more descriptive that, okay, out of all the model we created, the only compulsory one is this task at the front end to provide. Otherwise, it's even asterisk. So it's also going to tell you that, okay, it's a string, the maximum length is 100, as we have defined, the minimum length is 1. As you can see here. You go to post. You can also try post out, specify the task, and then the status. If you execute, it's going to work. You see, task, string, completed, true. The code is 2:1. So it's a very handy tool that's like, okay, that even reminds me, if you notice this documentation is here, the to-do task. So that help text that we added is also here. So it also helps the front end guy to know that, okay, this is what this task means. And then there's even another UI again that comes with this library right here, and that's the Redoc UI. So that one is also more beautiful. I think most organizations that exposes public API use this a lot because it's more beautiful. You can see, zoom down and see where it's over here. See it is required. You can see the post, the payload, you can see everything. It's just that we can't I don't think we can test over here compared to how we can be able to test in Swagger. But this is what we call API documentation, and that's what we're able to do just by using this library. So this is what you send to your front end guy that I'm done with the API, take this documentation, and then the guy will start implementing and integrating into the application. So this library is very, very handy. And, you can see in a few seconds that's created documentation for our to-do application. And actually, what it's using for this is the like under the hood. This is what is powering it. This class right here, serializer class. If I uncomment this, for example, and I reload to do our documentation, it's going to throw an error. But let me just show us. Let me reload this. Oh, cool. It's never try an error again. So it's not trying an error, but it's not providing information about the class. Let me expand this. You can see. I don't know if you notice the difference. Earlier on, when you click on a particular item right here and click on try it out, you'll see a lot of information about it. The model, the response code. No, I can't even do anything. I click on execute, of course there'll be error because this usual Django error because it's 500 internal server error. If I bring this back and I reload the same to do, you see that there's more information here. If it is to true error, so now that it's not true error, it's just limiting what you can see and see no parameters. It shouldn't be so. Now that I've returned this class, let me reload the documentation and you see power this here. When I expand this, you can see there's more information. You can see the response model. And when I click on try it out, you see the response is working. Right. So that's about documentation. Like this is how easy it is to integrate documentation in the Django REST framework. No matter how long your APIs or how huge your code base is, with this library you can create documentation for them. Okay, so that's by the way. Then I think the next thing I would like us to discuss is course. So I think we are still going to revisit Django when we are integrating our API in React because we're going to face this issue where we're not going to be able to make a request and get all our to-dos from our React application. And it's because of course, cross-site requests. So this course is more like a prevention to prevent attacks from unauthorized applications. So we would need to tell Django that any request that is coming from our React app, allow it, otherwise deny requests from other applications. So with course, we can be able to do that. Django does not come with course anyways, but it's a library we can use called Django course headers. So it's also easy stuff. We just install it and then we add it to a stored app. We add it to before the common middleware, and then we provide the configuration in our settings, which is returning is the allowed origins. So we're going to allow our localhost, which is going to be our React localhost or React port, and also our deployed to-do list that we're going to be building in React. So maybe when we get to React, we're going to do that. But let me just install this already against. So we can install this already against the React class. So when we are already talking about cost, that means we're already entering security considerations. And one of the first things you have to do when you're trying to ensure your app is secured is firstly by disabling the debug, making it to be false. Because if it's true, it's going to expose a lot about your server. That's not safe. And then the second security consideration is you having setting your allowed hosts. That is, you allowed servers. So this is usually where you deploy your server actually. So if your server is deployed on Heroku to be the Heroku app URL. So that's basically what's going to be here. But if you want to accept, ideally when you're trying to deploy an application, you always want to accept because you don't kind of know the URL that Heroku will give you beforehand anyways. Usually if you're using a random free Heroku service, they give random URLs or not random app names. So you can just make this to be asterisk to allow any host. And after you've gotten your deployed application, the URL, the app name, you can now populate it here. So there are a lot of security considerations actually, which you also need to look into. I think most of them are actually in the Django documentation. You can just come here. I know I've used some, but let me just check where you can get it. Yeah, under your security. So most of it are actually CSRF, cross-site request forgery protection. So you can set it right here. But the basic one, then this one as well, secured, HSTS, proxy, redirect, SSL host. So Django has a lot of security implementations, a lot of them. So you can just check them based on the need of the application and these are basically simple settings. For example, this can just be setting it to true or false. The same thing, setting this to 0 or 1, setting this to none or something. So they are usually basic settings that you just need to put in your settings file. Just like we have these guys right here. Just include them like see. Let me just check for one. And this, for example, secure SSL host. So I can just say secure SSL host equals to true. That's what I need to do actually. It's as simple as that. So you can just put the comment here to say security settings. So you can know that, okay, all the settings here for security purposes. I can also provide a link to the documentation about those settings. So not even for your teammates, but even for yourself. Because most of these stuff are too much. Sometimes you can even forget where you saw a particular information, so you can easily reference it. So that's about security. There's more security, obviously, even beyond, but the basic one is, for example, now if we are requesting you to do this from the front end, one of the security implementation, like the basic one, is to prevent XSS attack, because someone can actually write a script here. Let me even see if I can demonstrate that. I don't know if that's gonna work. But let me try it out and then try and write a normal JavaScript here. Inside a script tag, script. Then let's do a simple alert. Of course, this is not gonna work because Django already handled. Hello, my Django already converts everything that is coming to the front end from the front end as string, everything. So it's always difficult to do this kind of attack on Django application. But even aside that, even if beyond the attack, what's happening is populating your database with bad data, and trust me, you don't want to keep bad data in your database. So what you can do is to always, oops, the server is down already. So what you can do is to always clean those kind of data sets and those kind of incoming data, to clean them. And what we use for that is something called bleach. So bleach is a library. So I think this is backup. Okay, so what we use is bleach. Bleach is a library. First, that's um fuck. Let's see if the doc is working. Strange. Okay, secure SSL hosts. So because of these settings, you can see what security means. Like if you can just do a simple settings like this, you're making a request without a security, from a non-secure source. Django is not going to process it. So let's see if that's how to fix it. Let me restart the server. Or is there any setting I changed here? I don't think so. Okay, so let's hope that will fix it. Okay, it's not. That's very strange. Let's check out to do this is working. So why is the side job this is not working? So let me just go use the let me just paste the script here. Let me post it. So you can see Django already converted everything to string. But this doesn't make sense, right? Especially when you fetch this from the front end. Because from DB is saved as string, quite alright. But if you fetch this on the front end and you render this on the JavaScript, there's likelihood that this script might be instantiated and work, and you might end up seeing a pop-up on your screen. That JavaScript alert. I'll just say hello. But thankfully for the inbuilt Django security measures, you can see that even neutralized this guy right here. I added this slash here, and then putting everything in a string. But this is a simple script. They can be complex ones. So there's this bleach library that you can install, Django bleach, that you can install to kind of sanitize those kind of data sets. So it's easy to set up as well. So all these things are security measures. They are of course beyond the scope of this, but it's important you are aware of that. Then pagination. So as the to-do list increase, you start looking at paginating your API. So let me create, say you have 1,000 to-do list items. It doesn't make sense having like returning all the thousands to-do lists when someone hits this endpoint. It's important you paginate them so that your requests or your query will be faster, and then it just makes more sense that way. So yeah, I think I'll have to stop here now. But what's important is we're able to get our to-do API to work using the inbuilt view sets and router. So maybe on Thursday we can look at how we can deploy this to do application, because at the end of the day we need to deploy our application anyways, and we are going to be exploring how to deploy it with Heroku. And of course, we clean up our code and do all the necessary thing we need to do. I think this is the last thing we need to do. So I think when we are even doing this on Thursday, we can also start React that same Thursday because this shouldn't take us more than an hour to do. We've done the most important things today. So yeah, that's that'll be all from my end today. I really hope this has been helpful. And of course, if you have any challenges, you can always reach out because I would like to implore us to work on how the working API before Thursday, just by following what we've discussed today.